Hello, class. It's Doc Hallaq here again with you. Today, we are going to be talking all about images for the web and some things that we can do for preparing images for the web and even creating a website or starting to build a website within the confines of Photoshop and Photoshop's abilities. Obviously, Photoshop doesn't do HTML, and so it can't get onto the web, but you can create a lot of design of a lot of your design work right there within Photoshop. And I'm going to show you, you're going to learn today how to export some of those images so you can use them in building a website. First of all, though, I know you guys have been listening to me an awfully lot. I'm here with you almost every day, except I had got some really good feedback about the lesson where I had my former student come in. So I thought I'd get another guest today. And for today's lesson, I have invited a colleague here with me, my friend Lakshmi. Lakshmi Tramilia is my counterpart at Drake University. He teaches video production, media, and even does some graphic design up there. So Lakshmi, I've invited him here today to talk to us a little bit about our file types and preparing images to be used on the web. When Lakshmi is done, I'm going to come back with you and I'm going to show you how to use some of those tools to start laying down the basic structure of a website and some tricks that you can do within Photoshop to do that. And some of these tricks are going to even come in handy for other reasons in your design work. So stay with me. Right now, here's Lakshmi, and I'll see you in just a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lakshmi Tirumala. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Drake University, where I teach predominantly in the areas of film and video production, web designing, and graphic designing. What we are going to discuss today is image optimization for web. So what I did was I have put together a very short PowerPoint presentation where we will discuss about importance of image optimization. And then we will look into a couple of file formats that are more compatible for websites. And then we will launch Photoshop, open up an image in Photoshop, and we will look at how to save that particular image for web. Okay. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my presentation with you. Optimizing images for web. And why is it important? Why is it necessary for us to know how to optimize an image for websites? Well, because images are worth 1,000 words. What you can say in a couple of paragraphs, you can tell the same story with 1 or 2 images. And when it comes to the realm of websites and web pages, research has found that web pages that has images and videos tend to attract more users compared to web pages that are mostly text-based, right? And another reason why we need to look at the image optimization significance is because of that. Web users rely heavily on the images to understand the quality and story of your product. This is completely true if you're running a e-commerce website or anything where you want to sell a product using a web page. Let's say like you want to sell a product on a web page and you took a few images of your product before you put it on websites. The one thing that you need to know here is those product images need to be of high resolution and crisp. Otherwise, there is no way that users will want to buy your product if they're not pretty, if they're not crisp, and if they're not of high resolution or high quality, right? But at the same time, if you have a high resolution and crisp images, they tend to have huge file sizes. That's the caveat with having a high resolution image, right? They tend to take a lot more space on your external hard drives or on your flash drives, but they also will take a long time to download if you upload the same high resolution image on a web page, right? And so if a web page takes a long time to download a simple image, you are going to lose users. Research has shown again and again that if a page does not download under 2 seconds, that particular web user is going to bounce out because, well, we don't have patience for it to download all the way, completely 100%, which means we not only need to upload images that are of high quality, but at the same time, those high quality images should only take smaller time to download, which means they need to be of smaller file sizes. So that's the balance we need to achieve here. It is critical to find that good balance between image quality and image file size. So if you want to put any image on a website, you need to make sure that those images are of high quality and crisp, but at the same time, they need to be smaller in file size. So what are all the file types do we have out there that we can work with? Well, there are so many, but the top most or popular file formats that people work with these days are RAW. RAW images are those that are undeveloped. They could be of DSLRs, but in old school, RAW images are those where you take a picture with an SLR analog camera, and we put a film in it, and you take a picture, and you take it into a dark room and develop it, right? So that little film that is undeveloped is what we call a raw image. And the newer DSLR cameras can also create raw files, which means you need to open that raw file in either Lightroom or in Photoshop, process it, which means tweak the color, make it look better, and then you can save it into one of the file formats that we are almost work with on a daily basis, right? So, but when it comes to optimizing images for web, there are only 3 file formats that you need to focus on. JPEG, the uber popular image file formats that we all work with every day. The second most popular image file format is a PNG. PNGs are very popular with photographers and websites that deal with photography, right? And the third format is GIF. Although it's GIF, but the person who actually invented this said that he always called it as GIF, and I have no clue as to why he did that. Because for me, logically, it's a graphic interchanged format. You never say graphic, you always say graphic, which means it has to be GIF rather than GIF. But hey, to each his own, right? So what we're going to do is we will look into these 3 formats because these are the only 3 formats that will work the best for websites. And each type has its own strength and weaknesses. So let's go ahead and look into these 3 a little bit more in depth. So JPEG, also called Joint Photographic Group, but this particular group came up with a compression algorithm that went on to become a JPEG, which compresses your images in 3 or 4 different ways, from high to low resolutions. And JPEGs they're the most popular file types for images on the web. They're popular because they are easy to work with, and the compression algorithm that JPEG uses will maintain the image resolution while compressing the file size to a decent bitrate, right? So JPEGs are perfect for photography or complex images that has a lot of shadows and colors, patterns and gradients, which is the reason why JPEGs are a lot more dominant these days. Wherever you look, there is a JPEG there because it's the most universally accepted file format. And JPEGs have a huge color palette. If I'm not wrong, it runs on a color gamut of 64,000. If I'm not wrong, those how many colors and shades that the JPEG can actually carry with itself, which is the reason why JPEGs are fun to work with, and JPEGs should be your go-to if your image has a lot of information, a lot of color information, a lot of shadows and gradients. One of the main important thing with JPEG is you have options to save an image into a high quality JPEG, a medium quality JPEG, a low quality JPEG, or any other variations of it. JPEGs also allow you to adjust and save the image whichever way you want. That's one of the main reasons why JPEGs are also popular. It allows you to tweak the image, but also save the image in a particular resolution or any resolution and at any bit rates. The next popular file format is PNG, right? Portable network graphics. PNG is a lot more popular with people who are designers and people who are interested in photography, or people who run photography business, right? Because unlike JPEG, PNG can actually maintain transparency. It's, like I said, it's the go-to format for a lot of photo-driven websites. So PNG, with a PNG, you have two options. You can save an image in either PNG 8 or a PNG 24-bit, 8-bit and 24-bit. And PNG 8-bit is almost like a GIF file format where it is limited to only 256 colors, which means if you have an image that does not have too many colors and no gradients and not faded away, you will be okay with exporting them as a PNG 8-bit. But if you have a very good image that has a lot of color gamut and color pixels in the picture, you may want to use PNG 24, which is of a great quality, especially for beautiful pictures that you want to showcase your talent as a photographer, right? Which is what this is. PNG 8 is limited color palette, and PNG 24 much higher quality. But the only thing that you need to worry about is if you're exporting an image into a PNG 24, make sure that it does not contain larger file size. We already talked about this. PNGs are popular because they can handle transparency, while JPEGs cannot. Transparency is where you can actually see through. PNGs are great for logo designing because let's say like you are designing this logo in Illustrator. Usually you'll start off with a small white background on which you are creating this logo. And transparency is something, once you crop this logo out of that white background, you can save it as PNG, which means it saves the transparency, which means the logo does not have any matte background with it. So you can put that PNG graphic on a screen or on a website without having to have that ugly white border around it. Okay, that's the reason why most designers will actually export their logos or text-based images as PNGs. A lot of image graphics that you see on TV are PNGs because they do not have any background, and they can maintain that alpha channel, which is nothing but transparency. Okay, so the last file format that we talk about is GIF, graphic interchange format. GIFs are more popular because they can be animated. But when it comes to photography and images, GIFs are your best bet if you want a very small file size, because GIF can only carry 256 colors in it, which means if you have a picture that has a lot of information in it, a lot of color information in it, GIF GIF is not the go-to format. Also, on the other hand, GIF will also tends to compress the image a lot more than the other two formats that we have just seen. So the image quality will be at loss. So please do remember that. So if you have a picture that only has a blue and a white backgrounds in it, it contains only blue and white or blue and red, you would be okay with saving this as a GIF rather than a PNG or a GIF or a JPEG, because it only has two colors. It does not extend beyond that. So GIF would give you the best bang for the buck. Okay, so when it comes to saving images, so now that we have seen PNG, JPEG, and GIF, oh, by the way, that reminds me, there is also another popular image file format called TIFF. But TIFF is mostly popular for printing, not web-based. So please do understand that TIFF is what we normally see if you want to create a printout, right? A poster. That's when you want to save your image as a TIFF file format rather than a JPEG or a PNG file formats. Okay, so saving images, synthesizing all of this. Large images tend to take longer time to load and to download, which makes users impatient and get away from the page. The longer a page takes for it to load those images, the more of an impact that particular thing will have on SEO, which is nothing but search engine optimization. Google has this little spiders and analytics that runs on search engine optimizations, right? Where Google tend to rank order websites and web pages based on how quickly they load, right? So if your web page or website has a lot of high quality images that also has larger file sizes, it takes longer time for the page to load, which means it defeats the purpose and it affects your search engine optimization. So your web page or a website or your images for that matter does not come into the first page when you search for new pages or new images using Google, which is what search engine optimization is all about. If they load faster, if there are a lot of users that particular image will attract, we will have lot more, there is a higher chance of these images or of these web pages to be listed in the first page of Google search, which is the reason why we need to make sure that our images are not just of high quality, but they have smaller file size. Just a quick fact, which is I talked about at the very beginning of this little lecture, but just to show you this, 47% of users expect a page to load in under 2 seconds. If you have a web page or an image that does not load under 2 seconds or 3 seconds at the most, you're going to lose that user. So please be extra careful as to optimizing images every time you want to put that image on a web page. So there are 3 things we can do properly to properly optimize images for web. The first thing, always save your image in the correct dimensions. Always use the option of save images for web, which is what we're going to look into. And then there is a third option. If you do not have a Photoshop, or if you do not really want to do much tweaking in tweaking of the photo, but you just want to compress the image into one of the for it to optimize for web, you can use one of the third-party applications. Like the one thing that I use most frequently is called Tiny PNG. It's like a tiny URL, but it's more for images. So Tiny PNG is a website where you can launch the website and upload your image to that and select a couple of options, and it will optimize the image for you and save it in that particular file format that you have chosen, which we'll take a look at in a minute. And let me share this website with you. There is a website for free stock images called freeimages.com, which I've been using for about 12 years, I think, close to 12 years now. And there are a lot of royalty-free images on this website that you can download and use for your own projects and practice. As long as you can also use this for your own designs as well, as long as you give credit for the photographer, right? There are also royalty images as well that you can buy licenses and use it for your own project, but there are a lot of free images on this. And I have pre-downloaded an image from this website. Again, freeimages.com. You need to create an account with it and then log in to be able to download high quality and high resolution images. But I have already pre-downloaded an image, which is this. It looks beautiful. There are a lot of colors and variations of colors and a bit more of pixel depth compared to a couple of other images that that I wanted to work with. So I downloaded this, and what I'm going to do is open that up in Photoshop. And the first thing we need to do when it comes to optimizing images for web is to make sure that you always see this image at 100%, which means, again, here, this little tab right here, a little blank area for you to type type of percentage you want the image to be displayed in Photoshop right here. So what I want to do is I want to go full screen, not full screen, but go full view, which means 100% view, which will tell me, or at least show me, how big of an image that it is going to be when I upload this on a website. And if you carefully observe, I'm actually horizontally scrolling to look at this image, which is a big no, by the way, for web pages. You do not want to put any content on a web page that requires your user to scroll horizontally, right? So please be aware of that when you're working with images. So this particular image is at 100% right now. And this is also occupying about 11.3 megapixel MB of file size. The first thing I want to do is I want to quickly look at the image size as is right now. So right now, this particular image is of 3,722 pixels by 1,283 pixels at a 300 pixels per inch, right? 3,000 pixels is quite bigger compared to the website's width. The most common or popular web page width that people use, designers use these days, is about 1,250 pixels or 1,200 pixels, which is good enough of an image, right? 1,200 pixels is good enough of a web width for you. And the horizontal scrolling would be, the height of the web page would be as much as you want, because, well, we are more used to scrolling vertically than horizontally. So what I want to do with this particular image right now is I want to get into dimensions of this and click on it, fit to original size. So I'm going to change the size of this right now. I'm going to change it to 366. The only thing I want you to observe is this particular image is going down, it is actually downscaling the resolution to 72 ppi, right? So I'm going to choose that for now. I'm going to choose 1366 by 768 pixels, but I don't want 72 pixels. I want it to be at 300, right? So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and change the pixel per inch to back to 300. But observe, when I do that, it actually changes the width and height, right? So what I need is I'm going to get into my width and bring it down to 366 pixels. I think, which is still a little bigger resolution, in my opinion. You can actually bring it down to 1200. If you are creating a full-size image slideshow on a web page, 1200 or 1250 would be a good, proper width for images. And if you have, say, like you have a web page where you want to create a gallery of images, you might want to bring the width of the image down to maybe around even like a 900 or a 950 of a width, right? If you're creating a gallery, because galleries tend to have those little tiny images on the page, and you click on the image and it brings you the bigger resolution image, which is what this is, 900 and 1,000 pixels. So for now, I'm going to stick with the 1,200 pixels, 1,200 by 501 at 300 pixels per inch. I'm not going to tweak anything else. I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. So right now, what we did was we actually downscaled an image that has a 3,000 pixels or a 4,000 pixels to 1,200 pixels. And immediately, if you observe at the bottom of the Photoshop, 11 point odd of file size has come down to 1.72. We've already done enough here right now, right? 1.72 is a great file size, and we're not really losing any pixel quality. So what I'm doing is I'm actually zooming in or zooming out using my Command plus or Command minus to look at the sharpness of the image. Unless I completely zoom in, this image looks pretty good at that particular quality, right? So once we have done that, what we need to do next is, this is something which I always do. I go to File. Now that we have optimized or downscaled our image, now we need to go ahead and save it for web, specifically for web. So what we're going to do is we are going to avoid these. Normally, we always say save as for JPEG or a PNG or a TIFF or a Torg or any other file format. But this time, I want these images to be for web. So I'm going to export and choose save for web. Okay, so file, export, save for web. I'm going to click on it, and this will bring up another window, and that where you can actually see the tab that's opened, optimize, which is what we need. And there are a lot of presets here which we talked about: PNG 24 and PNG 8, JPEG medium, JPEG low, JPEG high, and all the other GIFs 128 and 64. Again, I'm not really using GIFs. I'll probably use either a JPEG high or a PNG 24. But let's look at JPEG high, because again, it's universal. JPEG high would give me the same amount of color information that a PNG would carry. So I'm going to choose JPEG high because this is a beautiful image. And in this scenario, I'm actually creating a web page to show off my photography skills. So I want a higher resolution image, yet optimized for web. So I'm choosing that JPEG high. And by default, the quality is at 60. So I'm going to change it to 70. JPEG high and 70. I don't need any blur. I don't want any matte either. So I don't want any background for this image when I'm uploading this. So when I'm saving this, so I'm going to go ahead and choose none for matte. And there are a couple of other things that I want you to look for. Optimized is the best version if you want to put this on a website. But let's say like you want to optimize an image for TV, like monitors and such, right? Let's say like you're actually editing a video project and you want to add an image into the video project under narration. And then you don't want it to be optimized. You would rather better off with progressive. Please do understand that. So progressive is something that you want to use when you're optimizing images for screens, for TV and film and such. But for websites, we're going to choose optimized for now. And quality 60 or 70, which is good enough. We want it to be an sRGB because, again, primary colors for electronic media production is, or electronic screens, are red, blue, and green, or red, green, and blue RGB. So we want this to have an sRGB color profile. I just want to make sure that it is double check the width and height of it and the percentage of it, which is good, 100%, 1200 by 501. All you need to do is save. So I'm going to save this as image for web. And I'm going to click save. So now that's done. I can go to my stop sharing, share my Finder so you can actually see that Finder. And so if you look at it, so this is my original image that has a 3.9 MB. Again, it's a JPEG. When I downloaded it into Photoshop, it actually read it with all these pixels, which is the reason why you got 11 megabytes in there. But so this is the original image pre-optimization, but now we have optimized it for web, which is for image for web, a JPEG. And if you look at the file size, it's a 241 KB. And it still is good enough of a quality, good enough of a resolution to be uploading to a website, right? In the same way, I'm going to show you. So I'm going to undo this quickly. So back to my original image, and I'm going to go back to image size. I'm going to choose again 1200 pixels, 53501, which is good. And I'm going to go back to file, export this time, save for web, but this time I'm going to upload this as a PNG 24, save it as a PNG 24 with transparency, right? Just to see just to compare a PNG 24 to a JPEG 24. So I'm going to save this as a PNG 24, image for web. So look at the difference. So when we optimize this for web, with a JPEG format, it had only 241 KB, which means it loads very quickly. There won't be any lag for the image to download on the web page. But when I did this for a PNG 24, look what happened. The image size is at 1.1 MB, which is still good, where your images will still be quick to download. So that's the at the end of the day, you need to be the one to decide what you want. You want a little bit more quality, which is again 1.1 MB is a little better high resolution compared to a JPEG of a 241 kbps, and 1.1 is nothing to be worried about. And if I were you, if I'm creating this web page where I want to show all the colors and everything, and the landscape, this gorgeous landscape to my web users, I'll probably choose PNG rather than a JPEG, just for the simple factor that my PNG tends to give me a little bit more color gamut compared to a JPEG when it comes to this particular image. Okay, so that's all there is. That's all you need to do. And the last thing I wanted to show you is this. The third way to compress an image is a tiny PNG. You can actually drag and drop the PNG or a JPEG file here, which will then optimizes and converts into a PNG or a JPEG that can be uploaded to a web page or a website. Thank you all for joining me. Stay safe and stay happy and stay healthy. Peace.
Lakshmi, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you coming in and sharing that information with us. There's a lot of that information that kind of goes in a little deeper from what I first introduced to you at the beginning of the class. We did talk a little bit about different file types, and Lakshmi has kind of given us a little deeper explanation of those and shown us how we can prepare those images so that they load quickly and are prepared well for the web. What I want to show you today is some techniques on how to design that build for a website. And like I said earlier, a lot of these techniques will probably be useful for some other types of work as well. So since we've already had some time with Lakshmi, let's just dive right into it. And I'm gonna go ahead and move right through this tutorial. First of all, you see the files here, web images, and these files will all be made available to you. There's the mountain image that Lakshmi used in his demonstration. Hopefully you have been able to follow along with that. And then the rest of these images are images that I'll be using in this quick little tutorial here. So we're going to go ahead and open up Photoshop, and we're going to create new. And this time, as we create new, if you're in the new interface of Photoshop, we're going to go ahead and find web right over here. And let's go ahead and click web. And for our purposes, we're just going to go ahead and use the most common setting right over here. And you'll notice that the setting for that 1366 by 768, but the thing I want you to notice here is it's 72 pixels per inch. So if you remember way back to the beginning of the class, we talked about the different resolutions and how video uses 72 pixels per inch, but so does the web. So pretty much any screen that you would be using only needs 72 pixels per inch. When you're getting ready to print, that's where you need the higher resolution images. So we're just going to go ahead and use most common here. And in this instance, the layout is more of a landscape. I want to go more of a portrait look. So I'm just going to simply go up here under image, image rotation, and 90 degrees clockwise. And now we have that image that is going to work for us. Now, if you remember, a couple lessons ago, I introduced to you the rulers. Just as a refresher, you can go up here under View and select rulers. I had mine on, so they are now gone. I'll go ahead and turn those on just again. View rulers, and now I have rulers across the top and across the side. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to divide my website height-wise into thirds. So we've got along the side here, we're being measured in pixels. So we go from 0 all the way up to about 1300. So I'm just going to click and hold. I'm going to pull a guide down here. I'm going to stick this. Actually, what I'm going to do is this top one, just going to put it right about 300. And then the next one, I'm going to split in half. So I'll go, let's see, that's 3. We'll make it another 400. Probably ought to go about 450 there, it looks like. Okay, so I've given my top area here, the header, room for about 300 pixels, and then split the other part in half. All right, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some guides. Again, we don't want our images to be butted right up against the edge of the frame. We want to give some breathing room there. So I've given myself about 50 pixels there, and we'll do about the same thing over on the other side. These may get adjusted just a little bit. That's okay. This is just kind of a starting point for us. And then this area inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up splitting this into thirds with what we call a gutter. So I'm going to put an image in here, and then there's going to be a little bit of a space or a gap. That's what we call the gutter. And then a second image, another gutter, and a third image. But before we start that, I'm going to go ahead and drop my first image right in there. But instead of adding a layer down in our layers panel right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the frame tool right over here. So our frame tool is right below our crop tool. It's about our 6th one down. I'm going to click on frame, and I'm going to come right here, and I'm going to select frame, and notice I can get my height and width readings right there. So I'm going to go ahead and make this square 180 pixels by 180 pixels. I'm going to drop it right there. Now you notice right over here on the right hand side, my my properties tab shows up. Now we haven't really seen our property tabs before, but our property tabs show us the height and the width of our frame. And it also shows us the X and Y coordinates of the frame position. So if you go back to your high school geometry days, if you remember the X and Y axis, that's what it's doing for us right here, is it's giving us that X and Y axis. Now, if I want to kind of tighten up the measurements on that, if I want some even numbers, for instance, I can just go ahead and take this, and I'm going to say 50 pixels there. And here, instead of 393, I'll just make it an even 400. I kind of like dealing with even numbers whenever I can. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but when I can, I like to go ahead and do that. All right, so now I've got my frame, I've got my base layer, and in my properties tab, I also have some other settings that we're going to pay attention to here. So you'll notice after our position and height and width, we have an option for insert image. And I'm going to select this drop-down menu, and we have a few different options here we can find on Adobe stock images. They've got a lot of images that we could use there potentially. We have our own library, and then we've got a local disk and a local disk embedded. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and choose that local disk embedded. And as I choose that, now what happens is my navigation bar pops up. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate to our class folder. This is all on my computer here. So if you've downloaded your images, you want to make sure that you know where those images are. And what I'm structuring here today is I'm putting together a mock-up for a website that might be a photo gallery. I like to take a lot of pictures. I've got a bunch of pictures that I've taken, and so maybe I'm going to create a website where I can show off some of my different galleries. So that's kind of what I'm building right now. So I'm going to go in here to Web Images, and I'm going to select, start with this antique car. I've taken a picture, and I'm going to now go ahead and select Place. And Photoshop has placed that image right inside that square. Now, notice a couple of things in what's going on here. First of all, you see this tall rectangular square, and what that is that's the outline of the entire image, but it is actually a square within that that is our frame. If we come down to our layers, we can see this looks a little bit like a mat, but it is a little bit different. So we have our layers, our layer right here, which is square. Remember, we got it 180 pixels by 180 pixels. And then we have inserted in that photograph of the old car. And because it was not quite the same size as the frame, it adopted the size, or it fit within the frame. But we can go ahead and move that around. So make sure, if you're going to do that, select the car image that's on the secondary part of that layer, and then you can just use your move tool, or in my case, I'm just going to use my arrows because it's kind of fine tuning, and I'm going to just adjust that down, and notice how that rectangle, taller rectangle, shifts there, and it's just shifting that image within inside the frame that we've created. So now as I zoom in, noticing here that the position of my frame is a little bit below my guideline. And as I look closer on my guideline, let's zoom even a little bit more here, that guideline doesn't quite come down to the 400 mark. And so I'm just going to go and grab that guide and move it right into the 400 level mark, and that positions it right on the top edge of our image. And then I notice here on my vertical line is a little bit inside of the 50 mark. So I can go ahead and move that. There we go. And that matches the edges of my image now. While we're zoomed in, we'll go ahead and stay there. What I can do now is I can make some additional adjustments to this frame. So let's look at the position here. My x-axis is 50 pixels and my y-axis is 400 pixels. So I want to create another one of these boxes. I want it to be the same size and similar spacing. So I'm going to pay attention to that. Before I get there, I'm going to select the frame itself again. And right here, you're going to notice I can add in a stroke. So let's go ahead and select stroke. And when I do that, I've got some base colors that show up. And then there's some other color groups that show up. I am going to use a blue right here. I'm going to select that color. And I'm going to select my size, and I'm going to actually keep it on the inside. That will make it so it doesn't change my measurements here. Okay, and now you can see that thin blue line around that. I want to maybe thicken that just a little bit. So let's come up to closer to 3 pixels, and it's kind of not agreeing with me. It's not letting me land where I want to, so I'm just going to type in 3.0 pixels right there. Okay, now as I look at that image, I see there is a stroke around the outside of that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to label this. This is actually going to become a button in my website. And so I'm going to label this. I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to use my rectangular marquee tool. And I'm going to come right up around here and make a rectangular box. going to now fill with a solid color. So I'm going to come up under Edit and Fill, and I'm going to select Color. Notice it oftentimes goes to Content Aware, or we can fill with a pattern or whatnot. I'm going to select Color, and then here it lets me choose my actual color that I'm going to use. I'm going to see if I can select that color of the stroke. And it looks like it did that fine. And that's going to be okay with me. I'm going to hit OK. And then I am going to hit OK once again to fill it. Right? And there it's filled. And the next thing that I want to do is I want to add in some text. So another new layer. I'm going to select my text tool, make sure my color is white, and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to type. I'm just going to call this Gallery 1, and now I'll move my, or select my Move tool, and I'm going to move that into place. And notice we get those pink lines again. That's going to help us align it in center and top and bottom center. So there I have my frame. I have the image that fills the frame. I have my band. I'm going to change that name there to band, not a rock band. It's just a band of color. And then I have my text that is Gallery 1. And this is all going to get grouped together. So I'm going to Shift Select, and I'm going to come down here to the bottom where I have that folder and click on that. And there's my Group 1. I'm going to change that to Gallery 1. And there I have all of my elements for that one button, all grouped together. So the next thing I'm going to do that's going to speed up our process here is I'm going to copy that folder. So I'm just going to grab that whole folder, take it down to my plus sign right here, and there I've copied it. I'm going to change that name to Gallery 2, and I'm going to use my Move tool. I'm just going to grab my, I should be able to grab my whole folder. It's being a little grumpy. Maybe I can just use my arrows. There we go. Let's use the arrows. And we've got our band off just a little bit, and our text off just a little bit. Go ahead and position those back into place. And with our text, we can use our text tool again. Shortcut on that is T. I can go and select, and I'm just going to change this to Gallery 2. And the next thing I want to do is I want to change this image. Oh, there it goes. You can see my inset image right here. I can go ahead and select again, and now I'm going to be able to go to my image folders once again, and I'm going to just replace that antique car with this picture of a base. And there we see again the outline of the image. This one is rectangular going landscape. So we can go ahead once again and we can make some adjustments to the position of that image. And I can even select my transform, Command T. And if I want to make that image a little bit smaller in there, I can go ahead and adjust that. And if I wanted to, in the case of these images, I've already gone ahead and made several adjustments to them. But if I've got my image selected here, I can even go up to my image adjustments, and I can go ahead and make all these adjustments to our image that we've already talked about. All of those adjustments there I can do to this image, and it will affect just the photo right there. So now I've got my second gallery. I'm going to go ahead and click that arrow and collapse that folder, and I'm going to copy it one more time down here. There we go. And I'm going to change this to Gallery 3. And once again, I'm going to go inside here. What I do want to do is I want to move that once again into a new position, and everything's aligned. But now I need to change my image in gallery 3. So the trick here to being able to change that image easily is we don't want to click on the image itself here. We want to click on that frame, and there we can insert a new image. So we'll go ahead and change that, and we're just going to keep going on down alphabetically in this order. You don't have to do that. It's just making it a little easier for me. So I'm going to choose canyons. And once again, if I need to, I can go ahead and adjust the position of that, but that one actually works pretty well. So now I'm going to collapse gallery 3, and I have now gallery 1, 2, and 3, and I've got each of their labels. Now you'll notice that all of these layers are loaded up into what's called Artboard 1. And I can change the name of that if I need to. Let's call it Web Artboard. And we'll go ahead and zoom back out now. And notice that those aren't quite centered. So what I want to do is I'm just going to select all of these by hitting Shift and select. There I get all 3 of my galleries. And I'm going to move these over to the right just a bit. And now that looks like we're pretty well centered in our image. So then I want to go ahead again, and I can adjust my guides. And remember, I used that term gutter. That's the gutter is right here. And so if I wanted to, which may come in useful for me, I can bring in some more guides to kind of position around each of these images and show me where my gutter is. So now as I scroll down lower in my image, then I will be able to see more of what's going on there. In the interest of time, I'm just going to add one more frame, and I'm going to come right up here and add my frame to cover the full width that covers these 3. And again, I'm going to add in a new image. This time I'm going to pick sand. And that's going to be my header. And I can go ahead and position that a little bit better if I'd like. But that's okay because it gives me some room for some text in here. I'm going to go back to my gallery buttons. These are actually what these are going to turn out to be is buttons that we use here. And I'm going to select one, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go right up here to blending options. And I can go in and I can add now, let's see, we're on gallery 1. Let me move this so we can see what happens. I'm going to add a drop shadow. You can see that drop shadow has come in there. I can go ahead and adjust that if I like. Maybe change the angle of it a little bit. I can change the opacity if I need a little darker. And I've already got a stroke on it, but I could add the stroke in here. I can add some of these other options. In this case, I don't want to get it too complex, so I'm just going to leave it right there. And what I can do now is I can take this little FX option right there, and I can click my option button on my keyboard, and I can drag that, and it should go right up to our second gallery. And I can do it again on my third gallery. And what I have done is I have copied all of the effects that were on this first gallery onto the next one. That makes it really easy. Now I could go in and I could put in my text. I might just put in a little text-based logo up here and call this my portfolio. And I can change it to bold. Maybe change the size just a little bit more, increase that. Use my move tool, and I can align it with my guides. I'll place it right there. Then down on the bottom here, this is areas where I could put in information for more galleries. Down here, I can maybe put in some information for contact. about me, different information like that that we would find on a website. All right. Again, in the interest of time, that's pretty repetitive for what we've already done. So what I'm going to do right now is show you quickly how we can export all of this information as separate entities, separate images. So we want the entire artboard that would be used to show a client a mock-up of what our website might look like. And then we can also export it so that each of these elements, buttons, can be different images that we can then go ahead and pull into our HTML program and actually activate the website. So what we're going to do next is over here, I'm going to select all of my layers in my layers panel on the lower right-hand corner. Again, hit Shift and click, and all of those are selected. Now this part here is important. What we're going to do is we want to export all of these. And what we would normally think of doing is go up under File and Export As. And that's where we're going in a way, but in this case, we don't want to go under File. We want to just come over here and right-click in our Layers panel. So right-click, we can go Export As. This should look very similar, very familiar. But notice on the left-hand side, we have a layer or an item for each of the different image elements that we have in our artboard. So we have the text, my portfolio. You can see what it looks like right there on its own. We have the sand frame that would be our header, and it's standing there on its own. And then we have each of our gallery buttons, and then that one's empty. So what we want to do here is we want to, again, Shift, click to select all of those, and we can see all of those elements by themselves. Our default settings over here under Scale All, one time, that's fine. That's where we want to be. We don't need to shift those. We need to leave our suffix blank. And then over here, most of these settings, the defaults are okay, but I want to change my quality. I'm going to drop my quality down just a little bit to about 80%, and that shouldn't affect much once we get onto the website. Scale at 100%, all the rest of the settings are all just fine. And now what we're going to do is hit Export. We're going to navigate to our folder, and what I'm going to do at this point is create a new folder, call it Web Elements, and I'll hit Create. And I want to put all of those things right in that folder. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Open. And it didn't take long. We didn't see much. Let's go ahead and minimize. And now I see my folder here, Web Elements. And look here, I have each of my gallery buttons, and I have my portfolio. And the one thing that I don't have is the whole artboard together. So I'm going to go back to my Photoshop image, and I'm going to select this web artboard. And actually, just for safety, I'm going to go ahead and select all things here. And once again, I'm going to right-click, Export As, and now we see our whole web artboard. We're going to go ahead and leave all of our the way they were, with the exception of our quality. We'll drop down just to 80% again, and I'm going to export that right back into my Web Elements folder. Real quickly, we'll do that. Minimize Photoshop once again, and there we go. Along with all of our elements, we have our web artboard. So then we can give that to our client and as a mock-up of what our entire website might look like. Okay, so that's how you can prepare your images. I'm sure you can by now, since you're getting much more familiar with Photoshop, you can see some other uses for these same techniques using the frames. So go ahead and experiment there. What your assignment is for today's exercise is I'd like you to go in and mock up a landing page or a home page for a website, for a portfolio for yourself. I know many of you are doing various types of creative work, and you're going to want to show off that work to a potential client or a potential employer. You're going to need some kind of a portfolio. If you have a portfolio already, maybe you want to go and just give it a facelift. If you don't have one, this is a good time to kind of start the design for what that might look like and create some elements that you can use as buttons and so forth. So that's your exercise for today, is just go ahead and create a portfolio landing page for your website portfolio. Hope this is useful. Thank you for sticking with us. We've got just a couple more lessons left, and then we're going to wrap up the class for the term. Hope this has been fun for you. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed getting to know you while we've been sharing our work in Photoshop. Come back again for a couple more lessons. We'll see you next time. This is Doc Hallaq in the Digital Workshop.